Okay, I am freaking out. I just finished reading The House of Sky and Breath, the second book in the Crescent City series. And oh buddy, that ending made reading that whole book worth it. Hey guys, welcome back. So obviously from the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about the ending of House of Sky and Breath. So obviously there's your spoiler warning if you haven't finished it yet and you want to read the ending for yourself. Also, before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Okay, so where do I start? I feel like before I get to the ending, I just need to touch on the fact that I almost gave up on reading this series partway through this book because I was not feeling it. I bought this book the first day it came out, and I bought on ebook, and I started reading it like first thing in the morning and thinking that like I would gonna be excited and I was gonna like fly through it. And like normally I'm a fast reader and like I can just like rip through a book. But when I'm not into something, like I can really tell, because this book took me over a month to get through. And during the time I was reading it, I put it down so many times because I was like, And like I finished multiple other books during the time I was trying to finish this book because I kept being like, I'm done with you. Let me try something different. And then I kept being like, fine. And then I would go back to it. And I just kept thinking like, while I was reading it, it just felt like it was very like messy and like chaotic. And like, I just wasn't really that interested in the story. And like I said, it was like messy and chaotic, but at the same time, it was also like really slow. It's such a weird combination. I've never, except for the first book, I've never really like experienced that kind of like weird combination where like you're being given all of this information, but it's just so dry. I just wasn't that interested. And it just kind of felt like a chore to read at times. And it honestly would put me in a bad mood. And it was a whole thing. And so do I want to talk about like some of the things that I don't like? I feel like, yeah, so I feel like I kind of do want to take like a few minutes to like just stew on the few things like from this book series or like this book in particular that like I just didn't like. And then I can kind of get to like why I'm even making this video, like what I'm actually even excited about. Because I'm just so conflicted. So my main issue with this like Crescent City series is just a complete like personal preference. I just don't like Bryce as a main character. I think that she just kind of sucks. I don't think that there is anything like interesting about her. I am like annoyed that she constantly is getting described as like this really awesome and like sexy girl that like all of these guys are in love with. I just felt like that was so overused for her. Like at some point you get to the point where you're like, can you just stop telling me constantly about how like at one point all of these male characters just so had a thing for her? Like at some point, like every single male character would be like, oh yeah, if she wasn't with Hunt, I would totally want to be with her. Oh yeah, I totally had the biggest crush on her however long ago. And at some point it's like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, she's hot and all the guys like her. Like at some point it's like, that's not like a personality trait, or that's not like good characterization for a character. And it was just like, that was incredibly annoying to me. And then to top all of like that annoyance off, like her actual love interest, like in Hunt, I just didn't feel any of the chemistry between them. Like in the beginning of the book, when we learned that Bryce was going to be like forced into an engagement by her father, the Autumn King, to Cormac, a different like Fae Prince, whatever, I was kind of okay with it. I was like, oh, is the love interest going to change? Because like I would so be down for that. But then of course, like later in the book, Bryce and Hunt, like they decide that they're mates and then they actually are mates or whatever. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, we're not changing things up. Like that's fine. I just didn't feel the chemistry between them. Like I wanted I felt like their relationship left more to be desired. And then also, speaking of Hunt, what annoys me about him is that I feel like we're told like so many times about how much of like a badass he is and like how he's like to be feared and like all this stuff, but like you never see him actually being a badass. Like you can't tell me about how like brutal he is and like how like in charge he can be and all these things and then have it never be acted out. So those are kind of my two biggest gripes with the main characters. And then like plot wise, like I said, like so much had happened in this book, but the majority of it felt just like dialogue only. Like I felt like we would constantly have like scene after scene where like some or all of the characters in the main group would be like sitting in Bryce's living room or sitting in a bar or sitting somewhere, just having these discussions with like these lengthy, dry paragraphs, like talking about like events of like important things that had happened in the past or discussing like what they were going to be doing and like making plans and everything, which like were important. Like everything that we were told like had a purpose and like we needed to know those things. But I just found it to be a major drag where you would just kind of like keep droning on and on about like all of this dialogue. It just felt so kind of forced where like they would be like, oh, let me tell you about this long past or this complication and all this stuff. And it'd just be like text, like paragraph, like talking. And it's kind of like, wow, you're just gonna sit here and just tell me everything. Like you're not gonna have it come up naturally or anything like that. Like it just felt so, I found myself when I was reading it kind of like tuning in and out because I was just kind of like, ooh, this is a lot of information, a lot of boring information. And I could keep, you know, droning on just like the book did, but I don't want to keep droning on about like all of these things that were kind of like bumming me out with this book. I just want to get to like talk about the ending because that's what I'm actually like really excited about. Okay, so before we get to the ending, I have to do like a super short version of like the lead up to what I'm excited about. So the group, they all go on like the mission to the Asteri. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Doesn't matter, but they go there to find out what's in this like hidden room that Danica had been working to discover the truth about before she died. And real quick, that was another thing that was kind of annoying me a little bit is like we kept finding out over and over again, like, oh, Danica has another secret. Oh, she was keeping something else from you, Bryce. Like, oh, here's something else that like she was keeping from you. And oh, you're sad about it. Yeah, I bet you are. Like, I just felt like that kept happening over and over again. So I just wasn't surprised every time something would come up that Danica had been keeping from her. I'd be like, well, there's another thing. Shock. But regardless, Bryce discovers that in this room, there are these pipes that feed the Asteri first light so that they can survive. And they're basically feeding off of the city's like population, like their first light, kind of like parasites, like they're just kind of like sucking it out. And then she goes into this other room where she discovers like this map of all of these like planets with like notes next to the planets about like showing what they have like done to the planet, like when they went there and like information about it and like the date on whether or not they had like terminated the planet or like conquered the planet. So at that moment, she kind of realizes that they're kind of like gods. They're just like planet hopping around and using all of these planets using up all of these planets before they go to the next one to kind of feed off of. So Regelis, one of them, he knew that they were all going to come here. And while she's in the room, he's like talking to her like through this intercom. He basically tells her that he wants her to use her powers to open the rifts so that they could go to other places as well because they're trapped on this like planet because her starborn ancestors like shut all of the gates to stop them from invading other realms. So conversation. Again, like a lot of just kind of like laying out like all of this information. But so she teleports back to where Rune and Hunt were waiting for her and they've been caught, of course. So more things happen, like fast forward a little bit more. Bryce agrees to help them by like using her powers. She says her heartfelt goodbyes to Rune and Hunt. I actually really liked the moment where her and Hunt are saying goodbye. Like he says that like he'll find her again and like, I don't know. I was actually kind of like, I was actually thought that was very sweet and very nice. So they say their heartfelt goodbyes. Bryce plans to get away from them, the Asteri, and go through the gate into hell so that they can get their armies to help them, like overthrow them. So she goes through this gate intending to end up in hell. And this is where I started freaking out. So I get to this last chapter in the book, the one prior to the epilogue. And when I was reading it, I'm like asking myself, like, does this chapter make up for me not really liking the rest of the book? Like, does this ending make reading this series worth it? And I hate this, but I feel like the answer is yes. Like, I reread this chapter multiple times because I was so excited. And I feel like the entire month of me slogging through this book was not wasted because this book did not end the way I was expecting it to end. I figured that she would end up in hell and she would, you know, be like, "Meh, I need help." And then it would just kind of end. And then that's where the next book will pick up with, like, you know, hell helping and like whatever. So I thought I knew where it was going. But so in the beginning of the chapter, Bryce lands in this place that is not hell. She's in this beautiful, ancient-looking city, and she encounters this guy with black wings who's dressed in armor, and they don't speak the same language. And I was like, wings? Oh my gosh. And then it kind of started clicking. And then she said that he had like scarred hands. And then I really started freaking out, and it hit me, and as the chapter kept going on, it hit me that the two series, A Court of Thorns and Roses and Crescent City, are merging together. I'm still like, right. So because of the scarred hands, it was pretty obvious that the character that found her was Azriel from the Court of Thorns and Roses series. He takes her back to this house where other people meet her, and we have different characters entering, and they're described. She's not telling us their names, but it's obvious, like, as she's describing them, like, who they are. So we have Amren, who's described, and she said that she kind of looks like Fury, which I was surprised by. And then we have Nesta and Cassian, and they discover that so she brought the Star's sword with her, and it starts glowing when it's next to her captor's dagger. And it's like, oh, what's gonna happen there? And so Bryce doesn't speak their language, so she decides to try to start speaking the ancient language to see if like they can communicate maybe that way. And of course, Amren can speak this language, and everyone's like all shocked at Bryce and confused, obviously. And then she describes Feyre coming in with her like tattooed arms and being splattered in paint. And then like also Rhys came in, and this is when I started like really freaking out because it was like super confirmed for me. And I was like it sounds so stupid, but I totally could have cried. Like I felt so emotional. It was the weirdest thing. Like I was just like overwhelmed, and it was just kind of like seeing like old friends again. And I was just so happy. I felt like it was the perfect way to end this like long book that I had like powered through. And I felt like it was just kind of like, I kept reading for a reason. Like I can't remember the last time that I was so excited about something happening in a book series. So once Bryce sees Rhys, she thinks that he's a Rune because basically everything about them's the exact same. Like they look exactly the same, except for Rune obviously doesn't have wings, and like their mannerisms and like posture and stuff, she says the same. And so I had this thought where I was like, oh, is that why Rune is like one of my favorite characters in this book series? Because he's basically just Rhys. Like I hadn't realized that before, and like I didn't think that there was like a reasoning, or there was going to be a reasoning between the characters being like similar. But obviously there's gonna be some sort of reason for them being similar like in the books to come. So very excited about that. So then Bryce says who she is, and then Rhys introduces himself in the ancient language, and the chapter ends. And like I'm still just like reeling about it. Like I remember I was just reading it and I was like, what? Like I was just so excited. And with that excitement just like came all of these questions. Like my brain was just flooded with all of these things where I'm like, wait. And like I feel like this move with combining these two series I'm just like hooked again. Like I'm just so into this. Like I can't wait for the next book. And I just can't believe that like I almost stopped reading this book like halfway through because I wasn't feeling it. And now we have this and I'm like dying to keep reading. And I'm like, wait, when's the next book coming out though? So I'm just super surprised and I did not see this coming at all. I want to know, like, should I have seen this coming? Like, did I completely miss something? Because I'm completely shocked and I don't even know what to say. Like, I need to know, like, have they been like just existing on like different planets this whole time? Or did she like jump into like a different timeline? Like, have they been like both existing just like on different planes? Or did she go like into the past? Or because Crescent City is more like futuristic. And so, but the Court of Thorns and Roses is more kind of like old-timey. So I'm like, did she like, are the planets just different or did she time travel? I don't know. I need to know. And then I was like, has Sarah J. Maas been planning this the entire time? Like, has she just been kind of like setting this up? And I completely missed it? And then like, is Bryce going to be a character in Elaine's book? What I'm assuming is going to be Elaine's book in the next A Court of Thorns and Roses book, which I'm sure it's going to be hers, but is like Bryce going to be there? I'm just so excited to see where she takes this story and like where everything leads from here. Like, there's just so many like options and possibilities and like, I don't know. I'm just curious, like for the next A Court of Thorns and Roses book, like, are we going to like backtrack from this moment, like where Bryce shows up and kind of like rewind and like see what all they had going on like leading up to this moment? And then we'll get like a bunch of the other stuff like Elaine's story and like, you know, who her love interest is and all that stuff. But like, and then is Elaine's book going to end with the merging of these two worlds? And then the next Crescent City book will pick up where this book ended, where Bryce is like landing there. And then the next Crescent City book will be like the two worlds like together? Or will Elaine's book literally just pick up with like Bryce just being in their world? Like, I need to know. I need to like be prepared. And I'm so terrible at guessing like where these stories are going. But like, I had this thought where I'm like, can you be mated with like more than one person? Like, I don't know why. I just had this like vision of like Bryce and Azriel becoming like mated, like while she's there. But I know that like Hunt is her mate and like they're definitely going to reunite at some point. But I can't stop thinking about like Bryce just having a different love interest. And I think I'm so convinced she's gonna have a different love interest. I don't know why, but I think it just might be like my trust issues with like love interests in her books with like what happened between like Tamlin, Feyre, and Rhys. Like I keep expecting her to change up the love interest for Bryce. Like, but we'll see. Oh, and also I had another thought where I was like, is this why she didn't keep Amren dead in Wings and Ruin? Because she like needed her ancient knowledge to help Bryce maybe? Like that would make sense to me because I was surprised that she just didn't keep her dead at the end of that book. Like it kind of like, it felt like she should have remained dead because like it was just a whole thing. But now I definitely need to go back and like reread the Court of Thorns and Roses series, like to see if I can like piece any of this together. And like, did I miss anything? Or is this like completely shocking for anybody else? I don't know. I'm just very, very happy. So I have no idea when the next book is coming out for either of these series. And I just know that I'm like dying to read it and I need to know what happens next. And I'm super hooked and like, I don't know, man. I just can't believe that the House of Sky and Breath ended that way. Like that is the last thing that I expected to happen. I would love to know anybody's theories in the comments below, like where you think the series is going. Because I am just so excited and I want to hear everything. So thank you again for watching and we'll see you next time. Bye.